What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Daniel Starkand with a little Black Friday update from the Dodgers, inking Tommy Edman to an extension, 5 total years for Edman and the Dodgers. Daniel, just under $15 million a year. Give me your immediate reaction to this deal between the Dodgers and the deadline acquisition.
I'd say my immediate reaction is that it's a great time to be a Dodger fan and probably not a great time to be a fan of anyone else. You know, this offseason has gotten off to a nice start for the Dodgers. Obviously, they make the Snell move and now this, which like you kind of tweeted, like, I don't think any Dodger fan is against this. Like, you know, Tommy Edman pretty much has a 100% approval rating from the Dodger fan base and well-deserved after what he was able to do when he came over last year. So, like, pretty much, you know, anytime we've talked about Tommy Edman, we've said, hey, they should look into extending this guy. And there were reports out there that they were talking. And now here we are. We're still in November and they were able to get it done.
Yeah, Edman was due to make a little under between $9 and $10 million this upcoming season. It was the final year of the deal that he had when he came over. To be clear, this deal actually wipes out the final year of that. So the 5-year deal starts in 2025, runs through 2029. There is a $13 million club option in 2030 as well. Breaking news here. There is some deferred money involved. Jeff Passan says about a third of the money is deferred, which I'm sure will piss a bunch of people who do not understand how baseball contracts work off. 33% is just about the league average, maybe slightly higher, but nothing crazy here. And so, Daniel, we're talking about an AAV that for contract purposes, luxury tax purposes, is probably going to end up somewhere right around $13-ish million for a guy that, you know, I've said it on this show. Offensively, he's not going to wow you. He's basically a league average hitter for his career, 99 weighted runs created plus for his career, but he's a great defensive player. And oh, by the way, he plays the two biggest positions of need for the Dodgers, both shortstop and center field, fantastically.
Yeah, I think the versatility is the key here. We know the Dodgers obviously, you know, love guys like that. And like you said, as of now, their two biggest needs are center field and shortstop, which you could say one of them is the biggest need because now, I mean, you have Tommy Edman to fill the other one, and you feel pretty confident about him in both of those spots and even more spots as well, like second base, corner, outfield. Like, he could play all over wherever you need him. So it's the perfect, you know, Andrew Friedman type player. Like, you know, the reports were that he had interest in Edman for a while. And of course, they make that deal at the deadline to bring him on. And no one really thinks a whole lot of it. Like, I think our staff for the most part was high on that move, but I don't think anyone could have expected, you know, it would turn out as great as it did, where he's, you know, the NLCS MVP. Of course, you got Michael Kopech as well. So that was a great trade. And now you're able to lock him down for 5 years. So now you kind of have that utility, you know, spot figured out. You know, he's a switch hitter, which you love. He absolutely mashes lefties, which you also love. So just feels like, you know, a good deal all around. Like, he's getting, you know, pretty much market value. Like, what if he was a free agent, he would probably be signing around the same contract. So it's a good deal for him. And it's great for the Dodgers as well to get this done.
Yeah, you mentioned the postseason numbers. That has to play a role. 328 average, 354 on base, 508 slugging percentage this past offseason. You mentioned he wins NLCS MVP. Well, also, you know, there were some key plays against the Yankees in game one. He keeps the ball in the infield that prevents a run from scoring. And so he contributes in all of the ways. And you mentioned it. This is a guy with the universal approval rating. You know, Teoscar Hernandez and Tommy Edman, I think, are the only two guys. There's not a yeah, but crowd with either of them. They play baseball with a joy, with sort of a tenacity, a grittiness that I think all baseball fans respond to. He's versatile. He came up with clutch hits. I wonder, Daniel, if the Dodgers made this move now because they think, coming off of the injury that he just came off of, I wonder if they think a year from now this contract would have been a lot bigger, because of contracts always seem to be bigger, but maybe they looked and said, we actually think there's more in the tank for Tommy Edman and that he's going to have a even better offensive season this upcoming year, which would have made his value even higher. Do you think there's possible? I mean, I know he's going into his age 30 season, so maybe that's unrealistic, but I just wonder if that's what Andrew Friedman and Brandon Gomes were thinking.
Yeah, I definitely think that's possible. And I also think it's possible that they kind of look at, you know, the type of player that he is, and they think, like, that's a player that's going to age pretty fine, where we don't mind giving him a 5-year deal at age 30. Like, he's not a huge power guy. like he does have speed, but he's not like the fastest guy where you're worried about like, that speed's going to decline and he's like half the player he was. Like he's still going to be a solid base runner, still going to be a great defender. Like, he's a contact hitter. So, he's the exact type of player that you kind of want to lock up like this. And of course, we talked about the versatility. Like 5 years down the road, he might be playing a completely different position. So there's value, in that alone. And we'll see what other moves the Dodgers make. But the fact that you're able to lock down Edman like kind of opens them up to make some other moves. Like I tweeted like maybe they look to trade Chris Taylor now just because he is a little redundant, and especially if you talk about re-signing Kike. So there is a lot of optionality there for the Dodgers, and we talked about how they have a need at center field or shortstop. The fact that you kind of lock down Edman here, like you don't necessarily have to go after a long-term deal for a free agent shortstop or center fielder or whatever the case may be. So I definitely think this gives the Dodgers a lot more options, which we know that's kind of what they love.
Yeah, well, look, one of the Dodgers' top offensive prospects right now is Alex Freeland, who is a shortstop. And so what signing a guy like Tommy Edman does is you're not forcing 2025 to be the year that Freeland like either makes or breaks his case as the future shortstop of the Dodgers. It gives you options because if by the end of 2025, beginning of 2026, they do feel like Freeland could be that guy, well, perfect. Edman moves out to center field. And if Freeland kind of doesn't click like a lot of prospects do, they get to a AA, AAA level and then sort of hit a ceiling, then it's very possible that Tommy Edman could be the Dodgers shortstop for the next 4 or 5 years as well. One more question before we close this one out. What does this mean for the rest of the offseason / the rest of the guys on the roster? I had people on social media asking me, does this mean they might not be interested in Kike Hernandez? What does this mean for Chris Taylor's future? What does this mean for the pursuit of a guy like Willy Adames? How do you see this deal impacting the rest of those moves, if at all?
I would say not at all, if we're being honest, just because this would like it's an extension. So like they were already planning for Tommy Edman to be on the roster this season, and now it's just 4 years beyond that as well, maybe even 5, with the option. So like I don't think this rules them out of Kike or Teoscar or anything. I do think, let's say they are able to re-sign both Teoscar and Kike, like I just mentioned a couple minutes ago. Like now maybe you try to trade a guy like Chris Taylor because there's not really going to be many at bats for him, and you have the whole utility thing, pretty covered. You also, you brought Miguel Rojas back as well, so you have an option at shortstop. I'd say, Chris Taylor, could be gone, and I would also say let's look out for Gavin Lux and see kind of what their plan is with him, because if Mookie's going to play second base, which is not set in stone yet, like Mookie could very well be back at short for all we know. Then there isn't, but if Mookie's at second, there isn't really a spot for Gavin Lux at that point. So, we'll see kind of what moves they make next, and that'll kind of tip their hand a little bit of where they're going to go. But I do think they're probably going to have to trade a guy or two to kind of, clean up that log jam, just because you got Andy Pages, who's going to be battling for at-bats. Dalton Rushing's going to be up here, before you know it. So they do have plenty of, quote unquote bench type, position players. So guys like Chris Taylor and Gavin Lux, that, they might be a little redundant, and maybe they're better off elsewhere if they could find a trade.
Yeah, you made the key point. Edman was already under contract for 2025. So this isn't going to adjust their desire to bring back Kike Hernandez or not. I also don't think Kike is an everyday player, at least not during the regular season. Maybe once the postseason comes around. But Taylor's the interesting one. He's a guy that Matt was the first one to mention a couple weeks ago. Like, hey, what if he's a guy that gets moved? Now I think that's potentially more likely if there's a market out there for him. So keep an eye on that one. You've mentioned Gavin Lux. We got to figure out what the Dodgers are going to do with Mookie Betts and what position he's going to play. I know Clint Pasillas had Dino Ebel on talking about Mookie could win the Gold Glove at second base. But if you listen to the whole interview, he talked about Mookie playing shortstop for like 85% of the time, and then just mentioned he could win Gold Glove at second. And so there's lots of directions that this could all play out. And that's the key. The Dodgers love optionality. They haven't backed themselves into a corner where they now need a shortstop, or they need to trade Gavin Lux, or they need to acquire a center fielder. They could do all of those things, or they could do none of those things, and they could field a really competitive team for 2025 and beyond. So again, 5 years, $74 million for Tommy Edman, includes a $17 million signing bonus, a club option for $13 million with a $3 million buyout, and according to Jeff Passan, about a third of the money is deferred. So contract-wise, luxury tax-wise, probably looking at an AAV of about $13-ish million. Tommy Edman will be a Dodger through 2029, and potentially through 2030. That is Daniel Starkand. I am Jeff Spiegel. Stay right here at Dodger Blue 1958. We've got live shows coming at you on Sunday night, and we will, I'm sure, have lots more to talk about on the Tommy Edman deal with some reaction from the Dodgers as well as from other folks. So enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. And as always, go Dodgers.